The alien queen sat on her throne of shining crystal. High above the rest of the grand hall, her eyes, the color of molten gold, scanned the room with a look of pride and superiority. She was a giant compared to all who stood before her, more than 8 feet tall, with armor-like scales that shimmered in the torchlight. Around her, the alien nobles and warriors gathered, their laughter loud and cruel as they listened to her words. She was speaking about humans, and every sentence dripped with mockery. She said they were too small, too weak, too fragile to be taken seriously. She said no human could ever be a real mate for someone of her strength and power. The court laughed with her, some making their own jokes. One warrior even claimed a human wouldn't survive a single night with a queen like her. The air was filled with arrogance, and the sound of their laughter echoed off the tall walls. But the laughter stopped when a single figure stepped forward from the shadows. It was a human man. Captain Marcus. His armor was scratched from many battles, his dark hair slightly messy, and his eyes calm but sharp. He did not kneel. He did not bow. Instead, he walked to the center of the hall and stood where everyone could see him. The alien guards tightened their grip on their weapons, ready to throw him out, or worse. The queen looked down at him, an amused smile on her lips, and, "What are you, little human?" she asked. Her voice was smooth but dangerous. "Do you wish to join in the laughter?" Marcus didn't flinch. His voice was steady as he replied, "I've heard your words, but you've never met me." The hall fell silent. The queen tilted her head, studying him like one might study an insect that suddenly spoke. Her smile faded, just a little, replaced by a flicker of curiosity. It was rare for anyone, let alone a human, to speak to her like that. Still, she would not allow this challenge to pass without proving her point. She leaned forward on her throne, her gold eyes locked on him. "Then let us see what makes you so different," she said, snapping her fingers. The heavy doors at the far end of the hall swung open, and a squad of alien guards stepped inside. They were the queen's elite towering warriors with spears tipped in glowing metal. Their armor was dark and polished, and the ground seemed to shake with their steps. "You will face my champions," the queen declared. "No human has survived more than a few minutes if you last longer. I will admit there may be something worth looking at." The crowd roared in excitement. Already, the bets began. How quickly would the human fall? Would he even land a blow before being crushed? The nobles whispered to each other, convinced this would be a quick and humiliating end. Marcus's face did not change. He removed his heavier gear, keeping only a blade at his side. It was smaller than the alien weapons, but it was sharp and well kept. His movements were calm, measured, as if this was just another day. That calmness unsettled a few of the spectators. The guards surrounded him, and the queen leaned back on her throne, confident she would have her entertainment. A gong sounded, and the first warrior lunged. The human dodged to the side with surprising speed, letting the alien's momentum carry him past. Then, in one swift move, Marcus struck at the back of his leg. The alien stumbled, roaring in pain. Gasps filled the hall. The queen's eyes narrowed. She had expected him to be quick, but not skilled. The next two warriors attacked together, their weapons slicing through the air. Marcus ducked under one strike, twisted away from another, and countered with sharp, precise cuts. Each movement was efficient, no wasted effort. The fight grew faster, the crowd's mocking cheers turning into shouts of surprise. One by one, the queen's elite warriors fell back, injured or disarmed. Marcus's chest rose and fell with deep breaths. But he did not slow. His eyes stayed locked on the next opponent. Finally, the last guard dropped his weapon. Unable to continue, the arena floor was littered with groaning warriors. Marcus stood alone, covered in dust and sweat. The crowd was silent, unsure whether to be angry or impressed. The queen rose from her throne, her towering figure casting a shadow across the hall. Her lips curved into the faintest smile. "Interesting," she said softly. The word was not mocking this time. It carried a different tone, one Marcus could not yet name. She dismissed the court with a wave of her hand, but her gaze never left him. The challenge she had set was meant to humiliate him. Yet now she found herself wondering what else this human might survive. What else he might prove. She would find out soon enough. For now, she simply said, "You may leave, Captain Marcus. But you will be called again." Marcus gave a small nod, then turned and walked out. The heavy doors closed behind him, and the queen sat back on her throne, her mind restless. Her laughter from earlier seemed far away now, replaced by a thought she could not push aside. Perhaps, just perhaps, she had been wrong about humans all along. Marcus stepped into the arena, the sound of the great metal gates closing behind him echoing like a warning. The ground beneath his boots was made of rough black stone, scarred from countless battles. Around him, the stands rose high, filled with aliens from every rank of the queen's court. Their voices were loud, their laughter sharp. The air smelled of dust, sweat, and something metallic, like old blood. He looked up toward the royal balcony. The alien queen sat there like a vision carved from gold and steel. Her posture was relaxed, but her golden eyes watched him with a mix of curiosity and expectation. At her side stood her elite guards, towering figures in dark armor. Each one stronger and faster than most humans could imagine. The announcer, a scarred alien with a booming voice, called out to the crowd, "Behold, the human who dares to defy our queen." The crowd roared in approval. Already, bets were being shouted how many seconds before he fell. Who would land the first strike? Whether he'd even land a blow at all. The first opponent stepped forward, a massive alien warrior with arms like tree trunks and a spear that gleamed with deadly light. Marcus didn't move until the alien charged. The spear came down in a flash. But Marcus sidestepped just in time. The blade of his short sword flicked out, striking the warrior's wrist. The alien roared and stumbled back. Gasps rose from the audience. The queen leaned forward slightly, her eyes narrowing. Marcus didn't give them time to recover. The second and third warriors entered together, moving with frightening speed. For their size, they came at him from opposite sides. Marcus dropped low, rolling between them. One alien spear struck the stone floor where he had stood, sending sparks flying. He used every ounce of training, every lesson from years of fighting enemies far stronger than himself. He didn't try to overpower them. Instead, he used their size, their reach, and their arrogance against them. When they swung high, he went low. When they lunged forward, he stepped aside and let their own momentum carry them off balance. The crowd's jeers began to fade, replaced by murmurs of disbelief. A fourth warrior joined, then a fifth. The arena became a storm of movement. The clang of metal on metal filled the air. Marcus's breathing grew heavier, but his eyes stayed sharp. One alien managed to graze his shoulder, a burning pain spreading from the cut. But Marcus didn't slow. He twisted away, forcing his opponent to clash with another guard. Two of the queen's best fighters went down in a heap, up in her balcony. The queen rested her chin on one hand, watching closely. There was no amusement in her eyes now, only focus. Each time Marcus turned aside a blow or landed a strike, she saw something she couldn't ignore: precision, patience, and a will to survive that matched her own. Finally, the last two guards came at him. Marcus met the first head-on, their weapons clashing with a sound that rattled the arena walls. He forced the alien's spear upward, stepped in close, and slammed his elbow into the warrior's chest. The alien fell, gasping for air. The last fighter hesitated just a moment too long. Marcus swept his legs out from under him, sending him crashing to the ground. And then? Silence. The human stood alone in the center of the arena. Dust drifting through the air around him. The Queen's elite lay scattered. Groaning or unconscious, the crowd didn't know whether to cheer or be outraged. Marcus looked up toward the Queen. His chest rose and fell as he caught his breath. She stood, her towering frame casting a long shadow. Her golden eyes locked on his, and for the briefest moment, the corners of her lips curved upward. "Enough," she said, her voice carrying across the arena. "The challenge is over." She dismissed her warriors with a single wave, but her gaze never left him. The crowd began to shout questions. Who is this human? How had he survived? Was he blessed by some strange luck or skill? Marcus didn't answer. He only sheathed his blade, gave the smallest nod of respect, and walked toward the gates. The Queen's eyes followed him the entire way that night, long after the arena had emptied. The Queen sat in her private chambers, replaying the fight in her mind. For years, she had mocked the very thought of a human being her equal in any way. But now, one had walked into her court, faced her best warriors, and walked away alive. And something inside her, something she didn't want to name, wanted to see him again. The summons came at midnight. Marcus had been given a small guest room deep within the palace, more of a guarded cell than a place of honor. He had just finished sharpening his blade when the heavy doors opened. Two of the Queen's personal guards entered, their armor black as shadow. "The Queen requests your presence," one said, his voice leaving no space for refusal. They led him through long, torchlit corridors. The palace was silent, except for the echo of their footsteps. The air smelled faintly of exotic oils and burning incense. Finally, they stopped before two towering golden doors engraved with the image of a lion-like beast. The guards pushed them open, and Marcus stepped inside. The Queen's private chamber was vast, but strangely quiet. Tall windows let in pale moonlight that painted silver patterns across the floor. The walls were lined with treasures from Concord. World's jeweled swords, alien armor, and glowing crystal orbs in the center. Sitting on a low seat, draped in crimson cloth, was the Queen herself. She was not wearing the heavy armor of the court. Instead, she wore a flowing gown of deep black and gold. Her long hair, usually bound in a warrior's braid, fell loose over her shoulders without the ceremonial crown. She looked less like an untouchable ruler and more like something else, something dangerous in a different way. Marcus stopped a few steps away. The Queen's gaze locked onto his, her golden eyes seeming to weigh every part of him. "Do humans always fight like cornered animals?" she asked. Her tone was smooth, almost teasing, but her eyes searched for an answer. Marcus shrugged slightly, only when the stakes are worth it. A faint smile curved her lips, though she quickly hid it. She leaned back, her long fingers tapping against the arm of her seat. "You surprised me today. That does not happen often," she said. "But you are still small, still fragile." "Small doesn't mean weak," Marcus replied. His voice was calm, but there was steel in it. The Queen tilted her head, clearly intrigued. "You speak boldly for one who stands in my court as a guest. Or a prisoner. Which am I?" Marcus asked, meeting her gaze without hesitation. Her lips twitched, as if she enjoyed the question. But she didn't answer it directly. Instead, she rose from her seat, the movement fluid and commanding. She circled him slowly, her towering height forcing him to tilt his head slightly to keep her in sight. "I could crush you with one hand," she said softly, almost like a threat, almost like an invitation. "But you didn't," Marcus replied. She stopped behind him, close enough that he could feel the faint warmth of her presence. "Perhaps I am curious. Perhaps I wish to see if your skill is luck. Or something more." Her voice dropped lower. "And perhaps there is another reason." Marcus felt the tension in the air. He didn't move, didn't turn to face her. He knew enough to let her lead whatever this was. Finally, she stepped in. Front of him again, her expression unreadable. "You will attend my war council tomorrow," she said. "I want to hear your thoughts on our next campaign." Marcus raised an eyebrow. "I didn't know humans were invited to such things." "They aren't," she replied. "Consider it an experiment." Before he could speak again, she turned away, walking toward the far end of the chamber. The conversation was over. The guard stepped forward to escort him out. As the heavy doors closed behind him, Marcus found himself thinking, not just about the challenge ahead, but about the queen herself. He had seen respect in her eyes tonight, hidden beneath the mockery. And maybe something else, too. Something far more dangerous. And somewhere deep in the palace, the alien queen stood alone in her chamber, staring at the moonlit windows, wondering why the thought of seeing him again stirred something she had never felt before. The war council chamber was alive with tension. The long oval table was carved from a single slab of obsidian, its surface reflecting the faint blue light of the holographic star map floating above it. Alien generals in ornate armor stood around it, their expressions grim as they studied the swarm of red enemy markers advancing toward the queen's territory. Marcus stood near the back, his presence drawing more than a few hostile glances. No human had ever been allowed in this room before, and the generals made no effort to hide their disapproval. The queen, seated at the head of the table, ignored their murmurs. Her golden eyes stayed fixed on the map. One of the generals, a tall creature with 4 sweeping horns, slammed his hand on the table. "We should pull our fleets back to the inner ring, fortify our worlds, and wait," he growled. Another shook her head sharply. "No, if we retreat now, they will smell weakness and press harder." Marcus listened quietly, his eyes scanning the enemy's movements. To him, the problem was obvious. The aliens were treating the battle like a slow chess game, but their enemies were moving with the speed of a knife fight. Waiting would only give them time to strike. Deeper, the queen finally turned her head toward him. "Captain Marcus, speak." The room fell silent. Every eye turned to the human. Some were filled with curiosity, most with contempt. Marcus stepped forward, all pointing at the largest enemy icon. "On the map, the flagship, you can keep moving pieces around this map for weeks. Or you can take the head off the snake now," he said. "Hit their flagship directly. Hard and fast, before they realize you're coming." A ripple of disbelief moved through the generals. One scoffed, "Direct assault? Madness. That's suicide only if you let them prepare for it." Marcus countered, "You're bigger, stronger, and better armed. But they've been dictating the pace of the fight. Take that from them, and they'll crumble." The queen's eyes didn't leave him. Slowly, a dangerous smile spread across her lips. "I like it," she said. Her voice carried authority, leaving no room for argument. "We strike at dawn." The council erupted in protests, but the queen's voice cut through them like a blade. "Enough, you have your orders." Hours later, the fleet moved. The queen herself commanded the lead ship, a massive battlecruiser that rumbled with power. Marcus stood beside her on the bridge, watching the enemy fleet grow larger on the view screen. The plan depended on speed, surprise, and absolute precision. When the first enemy ship spotted them, it was already too late. The queen gave the order, and the fleet surged forward like a predator leaping for its prey. Weapons fire lit up the darkness. The battle was chaos, enemy fighters swarming like insects, ships exploding into burning fragments. Marcus moved across the bridge, giving quick, sharp instructions to the crew. The queen stayed at the command station, her voice calm, even as the ship rocked from impacts. Then it happened. A shadow moved across the view screen. An enemy boarding craft latched onto their hull. Within seconds, alarms blared. The enemy had breached the ship. The queen rose from her command chair. drawing the massive curved blade she wore on her back. With me, she told Marcus. They left the bridge together, racing down the smoke-filled corridors toward the breach point. When they reached it, the air was alive with the clash of steel and the roar of alien war cries. The enemy warriors were huge, armored, and relentless. Marcus fought beside the queen, ducking under a blow meant for her and driving his blade into the attacker's side. At one point, an enemy soldier charged her from behind. Marcus didn't think he moved, throwing himself into the path of the strike. The weapon cut across his armor, sending a shock of pain through his side. The queen's roar of fury shook the corridor. She spun, slicing the attacker down in one clean stroke. Her eyes burned as she grabbed Marcus by the arm, dragging him back. "Toward cover, you fool," she snarled, but there was no real anger in her voice. Only something fierce and protective. The enemy forces were pushed back step by step until the breach was sealed. The ship shook again, but this time it was the enemy flagship exploding in the distance. The queen stood still for a moment, breathing hard, then looked at Marcus. "You saved me," she said, the words quiet but sharp with meaning. Marcus gave a small, pained smile. "Guess there's a first time for everything?" The queen didn't answer, but her eyes lingered on him longer than they should have. Marcus woke to the soft hum of the palace's private healing chamber. The air was warm and smelled faintly of crushed herbs and something metallic. His side throbbed. Wrapped in layers of alien medical cloth that pulsed faintly with light, he tried to sit up, but a firm voice stopped him. "Stay still, human." He turned his head and saw her, the alien queen. No armor, no crown, no war paint. She was seated beside his bed. Her towering form bent slightly forward, golden eyes fixed on him. For the first time since he'd met her, there was no mockery in her voice. Only something quieter, something that didn't belong to a ruler giving orders. "How long?" Marcus asked, his voice rough. 3 days, she replied. "You lost more blood than most of your kind could survive. My healers doubted you would wake." Marcus gave a faint smirk. "Guess I've disappointed them." Her lips curved in two. A small smile before she caught herself and straightened. "You should not have taken that blow from me," she said. "It was reckless. Someone had to," he replied. His eyes held hers without fear. For a moment, she looked away, as if gathering words she wasn't used to speaking. When she turned back, her voice was lower. "No one has ever done that for me before. Not my generals, not my guards, not even my own kin." She paused, studying him like she was trying to solve a puzzle. "Why?" Marcus hesitated. "Because I couldn't stand there and watch you die." Silence filled the chamber. The queen's gaze softened in a way Marcus had never seen. It made her seem almost human, almost vulnerable. She reached out slowly, her hand brushing against his forearm. Her touch was surprisingly gentle for someone who could crush a man in seconds. "I was wrong about your kind," she said at last. "I thought you were weak, fragile. But I see now I mistook restraint for weakness." Marcus gave a half smile. "And what do you see now?" Her lips curved again, but this time it wasn't a mocking smile. It was quieter, almost shy. "I see that perhaps a human mate is not as impossible as I once believed." The air between them seemed to change. The war, the council, the court, all of it felt far away. Here in this chamber, there was only the queen and the man who had risked everything for her. Before she could say more, a knock sounded at the door. One of her aides stepped in, bowing low. "Your Majesty, the council awaits you." The queen's eyes stayed on Marcus a moment longer. "Rest," she said, her voice carrying a strange warmth. "When you are healed, we will speak again." She rose to her full height, the commanding ruler once more. But as she turned to leave, Marcus caught the briefest flicker of hesitation in her step, as if she didn't want to walk away. And when the doors closed behind her, Marcus lay back, his thoughts filled with the image of her golden eyes. Not in mockery this time, but in something far more dangerous. Something that could change everything. The celebration of victory roared through the palace that night. Music thundered in the great halls. The scent of spiced meat and strong drink drifted through the corridors. Alien nobles toasted, warriors laughed, and the sound of boots striking the marble floors echoed like a drumbeat of pride. But in the queen's private wing, it was quiet. Marcus had been told to meet her there. 2 guards led him to the towering golden doors, then stepped aside, refusing to enter when he pushed the doors open. He found a chamber lit only by soft lanterns. Their warm glow danced across the walls. Casting long shadows, the queen stood by the tall window, her back to him. The moonlight framed her silhouette, making her seem even taller, even more imposing. But there was no crown on her head tonight, no heavy armor, just a deep crimson robe that flowed like liquid around her form. "You walk well for someone who is near death," she said without turning. Her voice was quieter than usual. Almost hesitant, Marcus stepped inside, letting the doors close behind him. "I've had worse," he said with a faint smile. She finally turned to face him, and he was struck by how different she looked without the layers of her royal presence. She seemed less like a distant ruler and more like a woman. Her golden eyes still burned, but softer now. "The council sees you differently after the battle," she said. "Some fear you, others want you in their ranks. And you?" Marcus asked. Meeting her gaze for a moment, she didn't answer. Instead, she walked to the low table in the center of the room, pouring a dark, fragrant drink into 2 silver cups. She handed one to him, her fingers brushing his for the briefest second. "I am still deciding," she said, but her eyes told a different story. They sat across from each other, the air between them thick with unspoken things. They spoke at first of the war, the enemy's retreat, the state of the fleet, but soon the talk shifted. Her voice lost its sharpness. Her questions became personal. She asked about Earth, about his home, his people, the food, the oceans, the stars, as seen from his world. He told her stories of storms at sea, of the scent of rain on metal rooftops, of the quiet hum of a ship in the dead of night. She listened, truly listened, as if each word was something she had never known she wanted. Then her tone changed, softer still. "Do you know the greatest fear of a queen?" she asked. Her gaze didn't waver. "It is not defeat. It is being alone on the throne, surrounded by faces that smile but do not care." Marcus studied her for a long moment before setting his cup down. "Then maybe it's time you let someone stand beside you." The queen's eyes lingered on him. Her hand rested on the table, fingers curling slightly as if resisting the urge to close the distance. "You speak as though you would take that place," she said quietly. "Would you want me to?" Marcus asked, his voice low. The question hung between them, heavy and dangerous. She didn't answer right away. Instead, she stood, circling the table until she was standing in front of him. Her height forced him to look up at her, but in that moment, there was no sense of power over him, only presence. She reached out, her fingertips lightly touching the side of his face. "You are unlike any who have come before you," she whispered. Her voice trembled in a way he had never heard. For a heartbeat, the world outside, the music, the laughter, the politics faded away. There was only the queen and the human, bound by something neither had expected. Before the moment could go further, she drew back slightly, almost reluctantly. "Rest well tonight, Marcus," she said, her tone slipping back toward formality. "Tomorrow, everything may change." She turned away, but the softness in her eyes lingered, and Marcus knew, without her saying it, that the wall she had built between them had just cracked for the first time. The throne room was overflowing. Every noble, warrior, and advisor in the queen's domain had been summoned. The air buzzed with curiosity and tension. The great crystal columns reflected the golden light pouring from the high windows, and the marble floor gleamed like still water. Marcus stood near the base of the dais, feeling the weight of 100 eyes on him. He had been in dangerous places before, but this was different here. The weapons were not just swords and spears, but whispers, suspicion, and centuries of tradition. The great horn sounded, and the doors at the far end swung open. The alien queen entered, every step measured. Every movement heavy with authority. She wore ceremonial armor inlaid with gold. But her crown was different today, simpler, almost symbolic. Her golden eyes swept over the crowd, silencing them without a word when she reached the throne. She didn't sit immediately. Instead, she stood tall, her voice carrying across the hall. For years, you have mocked the idea of a human standing beside me. You have laughed at the thought of a mate from a world so fragile. You believed they could never be our equals. She paused, letting the silence grow heavy. You were wrong. The nobles exchanged uneasy glances, some frowning, others leaning forward. Her voice grew stronger, each word like a hammer striking steel. This human Captain Marcus fought where our strongest fell. He bled for me, saved my life, and fought beside me as an equal, not because of duty, but because of choice. Gasps rippled through the court. Marcus stood still, his jaw set, refusing to look away from her. The queen's hand lowered slowly to her abdomen, the gesture deliberate. The chamber went utterly silent. And now, she continued, her tone unshakable, I carry his child. The words hit like thunder. Nobles stiffened, some recoiling in disbelief, others whispering in shock. One general took a step forward, his voice rising in protest. Majesty, this is enough. The queen's voice cracked through the air like a blade. Her golden eyes blazed as she swept her gaze across the hall. Mock us if you dare, but remember this, our child will be heir to the throne. Blood of two worlds, stronger than any who came before. Slowly, she descended the steps of the dais until she stood beside Marcus. The height difference was striking, but her stance made it clear this was not a man she would hide behind her, nor a token to amuse her court. He was her choice. She took his hand in hers, their fingers locking together. The sight alone sent another wave of murmurs through the crowd. From this day forward, she said, her voice steady, no one will question the worth of a human mate again. The hall was still divided. Some bowed their heads in reluctant acceptance. Others looked away in silent defiance. But no one dared speak against her. Not with Marcus standing beside her, and the promise of the future growing inside her, as the great horns sounded again. The queen turned her head just enough for Marcus to catch the faintest smile on her lips. A smile that wasn't for her court, or for tradition, but for him. And in that moment, Marcus knew what she had already decided. This wasn't just a political statement. It was the beginning of a story that would change both their worlds forever.